In today's episode, we are taking a look at some very interesting and impressive vintage lenses, the legendary Contax Zeiss. This is not going to be a scientific review. I simply want to share my experience and showcase the results I was able to achieve by using Contax Zeiss lenses with my Fujifilm XH2S. Some time ago I posted a video about Carl Zeiss Jena lenses. They're amazing and you can find the link in the description. And some people also suggested that I should try Contax Zeiss lenses. I've never heard about them, but the name Zeiss got me interested. So after doing some research and watching reviews, I realized I have to try them out. My original plan was to buy just one lens and save myself from a rabbit hole of buying a bunch of lenses and building a set, which of course happened the other way. The lens I needed had to provide me the equivalent of 35mm focal length because my Fujifilm XH2S has a crop sensor of 1.5. So the closest lens is Contax Zeiss 25mm f2.8, and that's the one I purchased. The moment I got this lens out of a shipping box, I was immediately impressed with its build quality. It felt very solid and premium. I've never had a vintage lens that was built that good. And just that inspired me to look into other Contax Zeiss lenses, and to my surprise, I found a parafocal zoom 35 to 70mm f3.4, which on my Fuji sensor becomes around 50 to 105, and made a lot more sense to get. At this point, I was really excited to see the image quality this lens produces. So the first chance I had, I took these lenses to the best place I could think of for the initial testing. First of all, I wanted to make sure that these lenses produce exactly the same image quality, color rendition, and contrast. Second of all, I wanted to see if it's easy to operate them and comfortable as well. Luckily for me, these lenses are great. They produce more neutral image, contrasty, also handling highlights and flares well. These lenses produce a very interesting look, especially if you do really good color grade and just grade them the right way, but you already know that it applies to all the lenses. Now, let's talk about the history of Contax Zeiss lenses for a moment. They were introduced in 1975 and were labeled as AEG and AEJ. Some of the lenses were made in Germany, such as my 25mm f2.8, and some were made in Japan under the Zeiss license. And that's what G and J stand for, Germany and Japan. They were built from exactly the same materials and should produce the identical image quality. In 1985, Contax Zeiss introduced the MM generation. They were still made in Germany and Japan, such as my 35 to 70mm zoom. The AE stands for auto exposure, the MM for multimode, which matters only when used on film cameras, but makes no difference when we use it on our modern digital ones. The real difference between the two generations is that AE version produces Ninja Star bokeh, which might be not so practical but for sure looks cool, and the MM version produces more standard bokeh. The easiest way to tell which one's AE and MM is to look at the aperture marking. The MM lenses have the last number of the aperture painted green. In my experience, AE and MM lenses, if not perform identical, they are extremely close, and if you're able to see the difference, you can easily correct it in post. Since we got to know Contax Zeiss lenses a bit more, the next question is, how do we adapt these vintage lenses to our modern cameras? Well, I want to suggest two options here. The first one is the cheap basic adapter, around $50. They get the job done. And I would suggest this option if you have one or two lenses. If you have multiple lenses and you're planning to change them during your filming process, I would suggest to look into Metabond's adapter. It's a specifically Cine adapter with the locking mount, which makes changing lenses so much easier. It's not cheap, but as I mentioned before, it makes the process of changing lenses so much easier. And if your camera is not full frame and you want to get the full frame look on your crop sensor, of course you can use a speed booster. As you probably guessed, I started with a basic adapter and later on switched to a Metabones one because I got another lens, 50mm f1.7, which I did not plan to buy but also wanted to test out a fast prime lens. I really like how my Fujifilm XH2S performs together with Contax Zeiss Lenses. And that's another important thing to keep in mind, is that different camera sensors produce their own unique colors and your results might be different from mine. But again, as I mentioned before, a lot depends on your color grading, lighting, and of course the look you're going for. Let's talk about each of these lenses. 25mm f2.8 AEG wide-angle lens. This one is probably my favorite one from the set. I've used it the most, its wide field of view is great for handheld and many situations in general. 25mm on a full frame sensor or about 37-38 on Fuji crop sensor. It's lightweight, compact, easy to operate, great build quality. The filter diameter is 55mm, so get a step-up ring for your ND. It's a bit soft wide open at f2.8, but improves at f4. Overall, a very good lens. Haven't had any issues with it, only great results. Simple as that. The 35-70mm f3.4 mmJ is a great zoom lens. It's parafocal, which means you can zoom in and out without readjusting the focus. It's great, but due to the lens design, the lens extends forward when you're zooming out. Plus to that, it has a rotating barrel, which means you cannot use a variable ND filter because it acts as a polarizer. But you can easily fix this issue by using a fixed ND filter. Honestly, it's not a big deal for me for the quality you get from this lens. The 35-70 is great for many scenarios, especially for run and gun filming. It's basically 3 lenses in one, 35, 50 and 70, and everything in between on a full frame sensor. On the crop, like my Fuji, it's around 50 to 105, which also great. I was very happy with the other 2 lenses, so I decided to try out a fast prime lens like 50mm f1.4, but later on changed my mind and got 50mm 1.7. The tests and reviews I've seen shows that for some reason 1.7 handles the highlights and contrast a bit better, plus it's cheaper, so it made sense to me. This lens is light and tiny. Its build quality is worse compared to 25mm and 35-70. Its body has this plasticky feel with painted numbers, which might get scratched over time, but the optics is the same as other Contax Zeiss lenses, which means this tiny beast can produce gorgeous images. Contax Zeiss lenses are known for its outstanding image quality and considered to be optically close to the famous Zeiss super speed cinema lenses that were used in many movies. These lenses are very sharp. I read somewhere that at the time of the production they were the sharpest lenses on the market made for 35mm SLR film cameras. Contax Zeiss has good selection of lenses, primes and zooms. Their build quality is great and much better compared to other vintage lenses I've used. They produce good amount of contrast. Overall, the image quality you get with these lenses is amazing. And the best part is, most of these lenses are affordable, but of course, there are some that are pretty expensive. Would I recommend these lenses? I think the answer is obvious, 100%. Contax Zeiss lenses are great for photography and filmmaking. I hope you enjoyed this episode, so don't forget to press like, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel for more. It's been a pleasure. I will see you next time. Bye.